In today's economy, data has become a product of unlimited potential with its own value and a source of new revenue streams. By creating new ecosystems around data exchange platforms, data sharing, data hubs, and data marketplaces, organizations address the world's most pressing challenges. Data ecosystems have become a fundamental component of business competitiveness, enabling organizations to reap the benefits of data exchange. Unleash the true potential of your ecosystem with DAOX.
We are live.
Hello and good day to everyone. Thank you for joining me today. This is the CDOIQ, MIT CDOIQ Symposium, and I have a great panel of experts today talking about the exchanging data and not exchanging data in it's a survival issue. I'll hand over to the panel moderator, Stephen Dolbeau, who is the Associate Director of AMI Council. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Baz. Welcome everybody on this session on an important and strategic topic, data ecosystems. I'm Stephen Dolbeau, Associate Director of Anima Consulting and former journalist for French newspaper La Tribune and L'Express. So if you're with us today, you must know that the heart of our world now beats with data. Due to the digital transformation of the economy, data flows everywhere: space, mobility, agriculture, energy. The COVID-19 crisis has accelerated this transformation. Ability to exchange and process huge amounts of data was already a major competitive advantage, but every business understands now the strategic importance of it. And so that's what we're going to talk about. It's not just suppliers and customers who share data, now even competitors agree to exchange data with each other. So to do this, they must build reliable ecosystems, and we're going to be talking about this today, data exchange ecosystems. How do we foster them, and how they have become so critical to resolve the most complex challenges. So first of all, I'll be introducing our panel. So Ludovic Codelupi. Ludovic, you're a business data lead at After Eyes, a secure data exchange platform launched by Movibia. Movibia is a leader in the automotive and mobility sector, specializing in car maintenance and with banners like Midas, Naruto, and ATU that you might know. Also, we have Tomoaki Nakanishi. Hello, Tomo. So Tomo is a project fellow for the World Economic Forum. He's contributing today to a project which is the Data for a Common Purpose initiative. We'll talk about this later on. Which is led by the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in San Francisco. And he's also executive director at the Japan External Trade Organization in San Francisco. And last but not least, actually not last but not least, our third panelist is Andrew Collins. Andrew, you're a strategic advisor for the Digital Dubai Authority. The Digital Dubai Authority is the government digital agency in charge of policies and strategies relating to the city's digital transformation, IT, data, cybersecurity. And last but not least, Didier Navez, who is a Senior Vice President of Strategy and Alliances at DAOX. So DAOX was awarded Tech Pioneer by the World Economic Forum. DAOX technology allows organizations to create new ecosystems around data exchange platform that meets regulatory requirements and address traceability and security challenges. So just before we jump into the panel discussion, can each of you introduce yourself and your work, maybe in 1 or 2 minutes max, so we can have plenty of time after to discuss the subjects. I would like to start maybe with Ludovic. Can you give us maybe facts and number on Movibia and what is exactly After Eyes?
Yeah. So hello, Steve. Hello, everybody. So for Movibia is an ecosystem dedicated to the mobility of today and tomorrow, working alongside users for 15 years. We have close to 2,000 shops, 2,000 car workshops, let's say, and centers developed through several model branches, franchisee, master franchisee in 18 countries. And Steven, you say the brand that it's Noroto, Ateo, Maridas, that it's well performed in Europe. And then After Eyes, what is exactly After Eyes? After Eyes is a two-sided data marketplace, specialized in fact in the automotive and mobility aftermarket that allow you to best understand the transformation within this industry. So After Eyes is a brand of Mobilia.
Okay, thank you. Maybe moving to you, Tomo. Tomo, what is the Data for Common Purpose Initiative, and what is the Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution?
Thank you for your kind introduction, Stephen. Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Tomoaki Nakanishi, but please call me Tomo for short. I'm very excited and honored to be a part of this panel discussion with the distinguished panelists. I'm currently project fellow at the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution World Economic Forum based in San Francisco. I believe I don't need to explain the World Economic Forum, but the World Economic Forum is an international organization based in Switzerland, which is famous for Davos annual meeting, usually held in January. The Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution is a global multi-stakeholder platform hosted by the World Economic Forum, focusing on technology governance and digital transformation. Currently, there are 16 centers in the globe, and San Francisco is a hub of the global network. I joined the forum in November 2020, focusing on the Data for Common Purpose Initiative, or DCPI. This DCPI project was established with a single objective: how do we unlock the value of data for not only for commercial, but also for common purposes? We are engaging with over 170 members across 25 countries and 80 organizations, including Navez, to answer this pressing question. In this context, data exchanges appear to be the most effective mechanism for achieving this objective. Thus, we have developed 3 work streams to address the separate but interconnected governance layers necessary for developing a globally interoperable network of data exchanges, and consent and trust, data valuation, and data marketplace service providers. I'm currently leading the work stream to identify and co-design a framework for data marketplace service providers, or DMSPs, and their roles and function in a data and insight exchange ecosystem. So I'll mention my activity at the forum during my panel discussion. Thank you. Back to Steve.
Thank you very much, Tomo. So we will have plenty of time to dig into this. Andrew, a word maybe on your experience and on what you're doing today in the Digital Dubai Authority.
Sure, Stephen. Thank you. I mean, I will take you back to 2010 first. That's when I joined the Greater London Authority, City Hall. I say that because that is when we started our open data publishing agenda. And I went on that journey until 2017 when I came down to Dubai. That was exciting because I oversaw the introduction of data science into public services, and then also I think really learned for the first time about how you build collaborative data efforts across organizations. So I trialed the London Office of Data Analytics, which is similar to and modeled on the offices of data analytics that are quite common in America. And then I came to Dubai in 2017, and there I have a broad advisory role in Dubai Digital Authority. This is a sort of cross-government data and technology accelerator. We're at our best when we are adding to the work done in individual entities. I get involved in lots of things: AI ethics, data monetization, data exchange, and again, I run a data science team within Dubai Digital Authority as well. So that's probably about enough for me for now.
Thank you. Didier, maybe a few words about DAOX and what is your role in DAOX?
Yes, thank you, and happy to be here. So I could maybe start with a few words about the mission of DAOX. As you all know, in today's economy, data has become an asset of unlimited potential. It has its own value. It's the source of your revenue stream. So what we do, actually, DAOX helps organizations, which can be private or public, to create, orchestrate, or participate in trusted data ecosystems. We provide technology, great technology to these organizations, but not only. As you know, also the data economy is still emerging with new codes, new rules, regulations. And therefore, as a pioneer in this new data economy, we're assisting companies through advisory services, and we help them advance their data exchange agenda. And we also like to share market knowledge and field experience in events like this one. And talking about our reach on the market, we work in more than 15 different industries. Our customers operate in highly strategic sectors, such as space, agriculture, retail, automotive, food, tourism, infrastructure, and others, and in various parts of the world. What is interesting probably to note is that each of those initiatives that are launched are very unique in terms of the missions and scope. But they're actually using the same technology and process layer that we provide. So to conclude, and as far as I'm concerned, I joined the company in the early days. I've been contributing to its development since, and I've been engaged in multiple projects for data exchange platform implementation from Paris to New York to Tokyo in the private and public sectors. And also I'm involved also in other types of projects on the regulatory front and standardization front.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Didier. So to be sure we're all at the same page here, I would like to ask Didier maybe to give us a little insights on the different types of existing data ecosystems, since we're going to talk about them. Maybe Didier, 5 minutes on data ecosystem. Can you give us a little insights?
Yeah, okay. So let's start by putting in perspective the different reasons why data ecosystems are being created. And as I said, there's not a single type of data exchange ecosystem. There are several actually. So we could actually look to some examples of type of data ecosystems, so that we'll actually can use this as a basis when discussing further on in the panel discussion. So one first use case that typically we observe is that when one company, it's company A, it's got some very valuable assets. This company understands the value of its asset, and it wants to make it available to the market. So it implements a data ecosystem, which it operates as an orchestrator, and reach out to organizations which can be very close to their ecosystem or more distant. Now, the same organization can also see the opportunity not only to distribute its own data to the market, but also providing data exchange services to other data providers so that they can use their ecosystem to distribute their own data. And at the same time, this company can also leverage its environment in order to source from the data from these other organizations. Another use case is when a company, say company A again, is actually implementing its own data exchange environment, mainly for sourcing data and streamlining data sourcing. Since typically companies that are heavy data acquirers in the finance industry, for example, hedge funds are typically acquiring lots of external data, but they're not inclined to share insights with others. So the focus is really about sourcing. This is another use case which is interesting that we see, and that we have examples of organizations that have launched this, is when an organization's focusing on providing data exchange services. It's not interested to distribute its own data, but he provides data exchange service through its platform environment, where multiple companies and organizations as data providers and multiple companies and organizations that are searching for data, which are operating in various industries and geographies, depending on the scope and mission of such data ecosystem initiative. And in this case, and we'll talk about that later, typically this type of organization will have to be compliant with new regulations like the Data Governance Act in Europe that I will talk about during the conversation later on. And last example of type of data ecosystem is when a limited number of organizations, before even implementing an exchange platform, they share some common goal, and they're putting themselves together so that they can share and exchange data for a common goal. It could be, for example, for training AI model, sharing data from various partners and sharing the results of the trained model among those partners. So typically that's going to be, they typically operate as a consortium, they operate as a joint venture. And as the time goes, they can obviously grow this ecosystem and invite other members to join. That actually is a few examples of the data ecosystem. It's probably important also to keep in mind is that these examples of ecosystem, they're not fixed for an organization. Its strategy can evolve over time. Therefore, it's important, if you look at it from a technology perspective, that the platforms and the technology that is used to support those ecosystems, it's important that it can support all these types of ecosystems, so that when a strategy evolves over the years, the technology decision should not be revisited, and that same technology can remain. So that will end my quick introduction. It was just a few minutes to position the type of environments we see. And I'll leave it to you, Steve, for continuing and engaging in the conversation.
Thank you, Didier. To ask the first question to the panel, I'd like to come back to the abstract. Actually, the challenges organizations are facing today, whether is it economical or environmental or societal, have become so complex it's now impossible for any individual company or government to solve them by themselves. So that leads me to ask you the question that makes the title of this very panel: exchanging data or not exchanging data, is it a survival issue? And maybe I'd like to start with Andrew on this. Can you give us your point of view on this and maybe share a few examples?
Sure. Thanks, Stephen, and thanks, Didier, for that tour around some of those examples. I mean, I wouldn't quite use the word survival. I'd use the words resilience and, in a private sector setting, corporate advantage. And from my viewpoint, I think that there are still issues around opening up data exchange that we have to settle, but that moving forward with data exchange absolutely does offer a chance for public services to be resilient and corporates to gain advantage over their competitors. I mean, the pandemic is quite a useful starting point, and I say that because I think it showed how you can share similar sorts of data to great effect, and we saw Johns Hopkins University do that from the very early stages of COVID-19. But I think there is another stage here in a public services or urban setting, and that's how we deliver on cross-sectoral data exchange and use cases. And something on everybody's minds and creeping up the political agenda is decarbonisation and achieving net zero. This is something that crosses over infrastructure, built environment, energy and utilities, transport and mobility, and changing consumer behaviours through looking at consumer level data. So there I see a really obvious advantage in moving towards data exchange facilities. The same goes for climate adaptation as well, building new housing stock, understanding how people are going to live in more stressed climatic conditions. And I think as well, just sticking with public services for a moment, there's a next generation of relational services that relate more strongly to individuals as customers and relate more strongly to place. These will be AI driven, and again, they must be supported by data exchange. I'll finish with a real commercial example from here in Dubai. The retail economy is hugely important here in Dubai. So with a range of private sector providers, we in Dubai government set about designing a retail insights tool to deliver in the moment or near real-time views on how the retail economy was performing over the course of the last couple of years. Now, this is interesting because there's lots of sort of data governance arrangements that Didier alluded to a couple of minutes ago, but we were working with a retail conglomerate, a payments infrastructure provider, mall operators, with the economics department here in the city, and using many millions of individual data points that we had to share with one another. And there are ways in which we can do that better, more efficiently in the future. But what I did, I think, was was an excellent starting point that proved that we can share data and drive value out of it.
Okay, great. So maybe Ludovic, you also have this. You can also have you also are actually a great example that maybe you can take us into this. You're a representative of the private sector. You actually operate data marketplace. Why did your organization engage in such an initiative?
I think there's a lot, there is a lot of answer to this question, but if I would like to highlight some of them, maybe the first one, and you understand that Mobivia, it's click and mortar, business. So we have shop, we have workshop, and so on. So we know that we have a lot of data coming from the ground, from the field, from our customer, so end user for, let's say, for the different people from the industry that they don't know. So this data it's an asset for us. It's very rich. So this is the first one. So we know that maybe tomorrow, this data is interesting for us to understand better what's happened in the trend of the market, but also we can also imagine new source of revenue. So maybe the second reason to do this data marketplace. So to create a new business model, to create a new source of revenue for the company. And when I say that, it's also a transformation of the company. We need to engage the company in the economic transformation through the data, thanks to the data. And then we can say also that if we take a little bit a step ahead, we are, as I said, an offline and an online player. And we are also some competitors in the market that is pure players. And in fact, we are asset, we are shop, we are with this kind of point of contact. We have a direct face-to-face relationship with our customer, and that is not the case for pure player. So we can say that it's a revenge of the offline or online to the pure player, because if we see that there's a transformation in the market 10, 15 years ago with the pure player coming, and now maybe it's time to come back on the field, let's say, for online play, for offline player.
This is very interesting, actually. Tomo, it seems we're at tipping points in exchanging data, and your point of view as a part of the World Economic Forum gives you like this overview, which is really interesting on this topic. Corporate culture seems to have changed. Do you think we're on this particular subject? Do you think we're living a momentum, and how do you think we can push it in few sentences?
Thank you for asking. So my conclusion is that I would say that the momentum to exchange data and leverage actionable insights is increasing. And the corporate culture is also actually shifting from, let's say, don't share my data or only share by exception, to how can we benefit from a collective exchange of data and insight. So for example, as some of you might be aware, there are some strong voices from the private sector attending the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum this year, held in Davos this year. So one example is that one participant in the energy sector mentioned, if I'm making decisions solely based on my own data, I'll make wrong decisions. So I need data from third-party sources, including colleagues and competitors in my industry, in order to understand the environment in which we are operating. This is also an interesting example, but another participant in the IT sector also mentioned that there are organizations that 4 or 5 years ago said, yes, we should be sharing data, but weren't doing it. Now they are sitting around the table, rolling up their sleeves and saying, in order to serve population in crisis, we have to know these matters. So with the increasing momentum and shifting corporate culture, I would say that it is time to create a practical and inclusive model for data and insight exchanges through public and private collaboration. So I believe we can achieve DCPI's goal, which is to unlock the value of data for common purposes, for common good, while protecting individual rights. This is my observation of what is happening in terms of data exchanges at this moment.
Thank you, Tomo. And Didier, you also have a great overview because you've seen various initiatives from the DAOX point of view. So maybe can you do you see some kind of trends in terms of rationale behind those initiatives that you're accompanying with DAOX?
Yes, sure. Actually, if I look at various initiatives in different industries where DAOX has been involved, actually the sense of urgency and or the search of strategic opportunity has always been present in those cases. It's always strategic, it's never tactical. And by the way, if we'll just listen to the other panelists, Ludovic present nicely the fact that sort of organization has, number one, realized its data assets are very valuable and others are willing to pay for it. And that's an opportunity to do business. And not only in their core indirect ecosystem, but also seeing that's a fantastic opportunity to, he was talking about the transformation of the company based in new paradigm. So there's a lot of strategic intent there in what I'm hearing. And if you look at other situations, for example, in the agriculture sector, it's also the sense of urgency that drove a company, Ag Data Hub, which is presenting itself as a project led by the agriculture sector for the agriculture sector. Ag Data Hub actually operates a mutualized and sovereign technological infrastructure to support the digital transformation of the agriculture sector in France and Europe. It serves hundreds of thousands of farmers operating in a sector, as you know, that is increasingly relying on data, where competition is fierce, where you have so many different types of stakeholders, from the very small farms to global multinational companies. In that case, really the sense of urgency was a key driver. But there are other examples like Space Data Marketplace, which is a consortium-based initiative that it's also driven by a sense of urgency and a strategic opportunity with the goal to boost the space industry. By the way, this initiative, which is led by DAOX, brings together big players like Airbus, Defense and Space, Dassault Systems, Thales, and also a bunch of great innovative startups supported by the French National Space Agency and the French government. And really the goal there also is to boost the use of geospatial data and related service to the new digitized economy. So that's just a few examples, but we could elaborate on different, but what to remember, it's always strategic initiatives.
It's great because just in a few questions, we've already saw like 4 different examples. So like, as we just saw, it's not only, as you just said, it's not only strategic to start exchanging data, we're witnessing, a real acceleration. More and more companies are engaging in data exchange, as if I can wrap it up a little bit, what you said. So I'm turning to you, Tomo, again. What risks, because there are also, and we have to address them, what risks and challenges did you witness organization commonly face while exchanging data? And how do you think we can address them?
Okay, thank you. At the World Economic Forum, we have had a conversation with multiple stakeholders, including private companies across sectors in the globe through workshops and bilateral interviews, and found that there is still an argument that a number of formidable risks and challenges do actually exist in the digital landscape regarding a data exchange ecosystem. These include, but not limited to, A, liability regarding a data an organization provides, B, lack of trust in intermediary organizations, of course, except for the WEX, C, perceived mutual negative impact on current business by providing data to other firms, D, the cost of compliance across countries and regions, and 5, there are no standardized incentive mechanism for encouraging firms to participate. So in short, I would say that some companies are still believing that the risk of exchanging data is disproportionately higher than the potential value of exchanging data. At the same time, however, I could also say that some innovative businesses are embracing the exchange of data and are seeing tangible benefits for their organizations and across their entire sectors while reducing the risks by harnessing technologies and governance, creating governance frameworks. So I believe that for the example, the financial service company, BBVA in Spain, in wanting to scale its data collaboration capabilities, made only aggregated and anonymized data accessible through geofenced secured application programming interface, or API. So this enables direct data exchange while protecting against unauthorized use of data and violation of individual privacy rights. And another example is using independent organizations, which can act as a trusted intermediary to securely and privately manage and analyze data and on behalf of a sector. So with access to the whole data set, data intermediaries can carry out their analysis that delivers individual insights and recommendations for participating businesses, while avoiding concerns about sharing data with competitors. So in short, there are some innovative businesses when try to address the risks and challenges by either technologies or governance frameworks or both. This is my kind of observation based on their interviews with their private companies.
Thank you, Tomo. Didier, what would you like to react on what Tomo just said, and what's the DAOX's perspective on this?
Yes, sure. Well, first of all, it's true that we live in an era of intense transformation. The way we operate and live is changing dramatically. We all agree on that, and data is playing a central role there. We're living like a perfect storm pushed by cloud and edge technologies, IoT, AI, big data. So there are huge opportunities, but of course there are always risks that is involved. Now, the question is about how to mitigate possibly those risks, and it's our perspective is that yes, indeed, it's possible today to mitigate those risks, and through a number of strategies. First of all, we could look at institutional level with the definition of regulatory frameworks, and Tomo mentioned that, that really contribute to creating trust. For example, Europe today, through the Data Governance Act, is defining the principle of a label and a logo for data intermediation service providers that are, for those who are complying with the set of rules that have been defined, which rules are there to actually increase the trust in such data intermediaries. Technology, of course, is playing a key role in increasing trust because technology can provide secure and compliant environments, providing traceability and efficiency. And with the right technologies, participants in that ecosystem can keep full control over who they are sharing the data with, what terms and conditions, what price, if it's a financial transaction attached, which is not necessarily the case. But they can decide also where the data resides, on which cloud, if they exchange data through marketplace or outside in a distributed mode, etc., etc. So all these elements give really control to the data providers and the data consumers or acquirers, and that really contributes to creating trust. And maybe last, on a more global perspective, when we're talking about risk, it's often about the perceived risk also. It's a question also of not necessarily real risk, but perceived risk. And the work done by the big think tanks and associations, they're actually contributing a lot in changing the mindset about data exchange, especially at board level. If we look, you were mentioning the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos this year, there were 4 sessions on the very topic of data exchange. That says a lot. And also, when talking about associations, the work of Gaia-X also contributing a lot to creating trust. What is Gaia-X? For those who don't know, it's a European foundation which includes thousands of contributors from more than 300 organizations. And its mission is to define the next generation of federated and sovereign data infrastructure. And within the Gaia-X roadmap and plan, data exchange is a key pillar. It's central. There's a dedicated working group that is focusing very specifically on that matter, on topics like data exchange, the vocabulary around data exchange, trusted data transaction, compliance, interoperability, licensing and policies negotiation, traceability, discoverability, etc., etc. And by the way, DAO-X is leading that working group. So long story short, the outcome of all this that are examples I was mentioning is contributing a lot to creating trust and to mitigating the risk that Tomo was talking about from its conversation with the corporation. So we're very, very optimistic about the future about this.
You can hear me if I'm not putting my mic on, so sorry. Ludo, when you led the Afterize project for Mobivia, what were the challenges and opportunities of building a data marketplace? And was it a lot of like internal selling? What about convincing your top management? Can you give us a few insights about this? Yeah. Very concrete things, you know?
Yeah, in fact, the first one, it's maybe, let's say, funny from some people of that's listen to us, but it's to connect we have a lot of, as you know, we have a lot of blocks. So to connect all these blocks with all the data that we have to make relevant and to be used, all of them. That's the first one. Then to convince the top management, there is no question on the why, because we want to create new revenue, we want to transform the company and so on. So there is no question on the why. The question is on the how. In fact, how we can do that. Okay, create a data marketplace. It's easy to say, but how we can do that, with which technology, and so on. So how we can secure, we can also be in line with the expectation in Europe and so on, the new regulation coming in. So we need to identify the good partner for that, and also to how we can organize internally to make it happen. In fact, so all this question comes when we want to create this data marketplace, and in fact, we want to, as I said, to lead this change. We want to lead. It's a real transformation of the segment. So all these questions, it's to make it happen is that, in fact, clearly.
What about the cultural inside transformation? How did the people inside the company accepted to finally share data and be in this set of mind?
The question is, in fact, on monetization, there is a lot of question behind, because monetization, it's easy to say monetization, but when we want to go deeper, in fact, we identify 2 pillars. We have the data for business and the data as a business. So, and then it's response each other. Okay, so data for business is how we can collect the data from the shop, from the workshop, and to create more services to our customer. And the data as business is clearly what we call monetization. So it's sometimes we need to, I prefer to give you some explanation behind that, because it sometimes can be just a, let's say, a word, say in this beautiful world of data, but it's also to create an income, a new income for the company. We have several resources, revenue from the shop, from the takeaway from the shop, from the workshop, and we want to create also a new source of revenue. So in that, we identify some 4 golden rules. We need to be clear on what we can do in terms of monetization, which data, on to who, and so on and so on. So we need to create this kind of golden rules, let's say. So,
okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's great that you were talking about monetization, because it's the next subject I wanted to talk with you all about. So and especially with you and Andrew. So you gave us your point of view. Now, Andrew, is monetization a subject for the government, and like, is it taboo?
Yeah, I mean, I think here you have to bear in mind that I do come from a sort of entrepreneurial government perspective, and my headline answer to the question is no, it's not taboo at all. It's absolutely key to that next stage in boosting data exchange. I think the rider that I attach to this is that we absolutely have to get the fundamentals right, because there are a couple of keywords that have been mentioned along the way here, which are mitigating risk and building trust. And I think that getting monetization right is key here. Now, the starting point in a lot of the discussions that I have, I believe, is the wrong one, which is that we want to sell our data. There's nothing wrong with selling data, but I think the better starting point is to say that we want to drive value out of our data as a strategic asset. And that could include open data, which I'll come on to in a second. But what I remark upon here is that data is a funny thing. It has some very peculiar economic behaviors that we have to get right. It's non-rivalrous. It's non-depletive. You can use it many times over. You can add it to other data sources. You can sell it in aggregate. You can sell it at sort of individual case level. You can find sort of a nugget in a single piece of data or big data. So that means that you need a whole array of business models that have to be underpinned by proper monetization. So, I mean, we've danced around data monetization in Dubai for a while, and I think we think the time is right now to move back towards trying to build stronger value-based data monetization policies with a strong data monetization toolkit inside it. That for us in Dubai Digital Authority is a priority in the back half of 2022. Now, some of this is quite straightforward. It's about taking almost like a government accounting approach to understanding the direct and indirect benefits that you drive out of data. It's about being able to set those off against the quantified or the quantification, the financial quantification of the inputs, the things that you do to create the data so that you can sell it. So in some respects, really straightforward, but in other respects quite difficult because of data and its characteristics. I mean, I think there are places where government should be careful in moving towards. So commercialization, I think, is something that we would have a limited contribution, because there's a private sector that does that very well, but we need to understand how, if public data assets are being used, that they are being used and commercialized correctly. We do work in Dubai. Again, we've been talking about AI a little bit, on safe, fair, responsible use of AI. And again, I think that's another sort of piece of regulation that that is useful in and around this broader point on monetization. I'll finish with one point that I alluded to a couple of minutes ago, which is about existing data policies. And I mentioned that I've been involved with open data for over a decade now, and it feels like it's time for a bit of a refresh to reflect the fact that we have lots more data, significant significantly heavier data flows, different types of data. Didier mentioned IoT, for example. And I think because it's best to start off considering data as a public good, as a wider asset. But there are now, I think, cases where we should maybe monetize open data. That doesn't mean that we choke off innovation. We make open data available up to a point, but if there are private sector organizations driving profit out of productizing that data, then I think it's reasonable, given the costs that are attached to government curating and publishing that data, that it's fair game. And it's important as well that, as government's job is to create fair markets, that we don't choke off SMEs and allow the big players who can afford to buy lots of data to do so. So I think looking at existing policies, making sure that data monetization is coherent with those is an important task that sits within this broader question of monetization.
Okay, great. I was actually going to ask you about the open data, so it's perfect that you've answered it. Didier, how is it possible to go even further in monetization?
Sure. I would say that interconnecting data exchange ecosystem will certainly create even more benefits thanks to a network effect that will follow. What does that mean? Actually, for data providers, is simply having the possibility of exposing its data in different ecosystems for more benefits and more revenue opportunities. And for the data acquirers, it's obviously having access to more relevant data for its own use case. And for the orchestrators of those ecosystems, it's a new opportunity for building new partnerships with other orchestrators of ecosystem, and also offering added value service to its ecosystems participants. Just to illustrate this, I was talking earlier about two data exchange ecosystems within space and agriculture sector. We can easily understand the potential benefits of interconnecting such data ecosystems.
Thank you very much. We have 15 minutes left, so we're gonna have to accelerate a little bit if we want to be able to take some questions at the end. So as you just explained as Didier, the benefits of participating or operating in data ecosystems are not only about the direct income, it's also it also creates a shift in the way to do business with a more partnership approach. Ludovic, did you witness this shift in your company in Movivia and with After Eyes?
Yeah, we completely, yes, because in fact, this allows us to have more partnership approach and to broaden our scope of possibilities, working with partners that we never thought we work with, in fact. Our ecosystem is expanding. We are connecting with some, as I said, with some people that we never think: insurance, banks, hedge fund, etc. And in fact, it's completely expanded. So yeah, exactly, it's completely shift here.
Thank you. Talking about benefits, what other benefits can we retrieve in participating in a data ecosystem?
So meaning not direct income related.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I certainly say brand image. Being a data exchange ecosystem orchestrator is putting the organization in the central and highly visible position. And that, as Ludovic was saying, is providing opportunity to reinforce and create deep links with customers, suppliers, partners, and opening new horizons. I was mentioning with the new types of industry that he's reaching out to. Now, quickly, another point that I could mention is that financial markets are valuing data-savvy companies higher than competitors that would be less data mature. There's an interesting study, by the way, from Doug Laney that is showing that the market to book value of a data-savvy company will be twice the ratio compared to an average company, and even 3 times bigger if the company is even further in its maturity level by being a data product company. So financial markets love data savvy company, and they transform that into the value of the company.
Tomo, how do you see the role of orchestrators in data ecosystem? How can they facilitate the exchange of actionable insights more precisely?
Sure, thank you. So in terms of orchestrators in data ecosystem that are data intermediaries, I'm arguing that data marketplace service providers, or DMSPs, as I mentioned, would be one of the essential governance layer or to expand the data ecosystem, and could create a foundation on which exchange of insights and data could be leveraged for common purposes. So they will function, as the Didier suggested, they function as not only as a primary orchestrator, operators, and manager of data exchanges, but also hopefully as a trust anchor. And moreover, I would argue that DMSPs, or data intermediaries, or data orchestrators, or whatever, could foster an environment where sector experts and policymakers can leverage insights derived from data to answer specific questions to multiple problems. So in this regard, while real-time or large-scale raw data sets certainly have intrinsic value for certain applications, I would say that a real impact can be more effectively achieved with access to actionable insights. So with those arguments in mind, for instance, if a DMSP or data orchestrator mainly facilitates simple data transfer between data providers and data consumers in the exchange for commercial purposes, standardizing the format of traded data and the contracts may be the most important element. And user-friendly data catalogs are also very important for data consumers. And of course, disclosing transaction prices is also enhancing the market mechanism that could lead to the price discovery function. And last but not least, DMSP, or data orchestrator, should give data providers control over the use of their data by technological and contractual means, as also the Didier is suggested. So, of course, if a DMSP expands the function from data exchanges only for commercial purposes to collective exchange of data and insights for the common good, however, I believe that there are several key functions that may need to be added. And so I have not yet identified concrete functions of DMSPs or data orchestrators for the common good. I would argue that a practical model is one which will simultaneously reduce the risk of exchanging data in its raw form and incentivize the private sector to exchange insights that are targeted with a specific application. And so I believe that the further discussion in terms of the data exchanges for common good is needed to identify building blocks, which will enable DMSPs to facilitate the exchange of actionable insights for common good. But at this moment, so far, I could identify several key functions of DMSPs for common purposes, mainly the common commercial purposes.
So the subject is moving on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tomo. Moving to governments and regulation, they have a crucial role to play in setting the environment and to facilitate data exchange. Didier, there have been major evolutions in the last months, especially in Europe. Could you tell us about the recently adopted Data Governance Act and the future Data Act?
Yes, and I try to be brief because it's a long subject. And for the sake of time, let's try to be brief. Actually, yes, I mentioned several times those key pieces of regulation. The first one, the Data Governance Act, has been adopted, so it will be in application throughout Europe September next year. If really I had to summarize, the aim of this regulation is to ensure trust in data transactions. And it's addressing non-personal data, industrial data, while the GDPR was addressing personal data. And one key element of the regulation is that it stipulates that data intermediation services provider, which is something new that the regulation actually is defining and regulating actually, that those data intermediation services shall remain neutral. as regard to the data exchange between data providers and data consumer. So they can only act as intermediaries, but they cannot use the data for any other purposes. And that means that there's a number of impacts, including the technology that's being used. Then we have the Data Act, which is a new regulation proposed by the Commission in February this year. And in this case, the aim is to ensure fairness in the allocation of data value amongst the various actors of the economy. And no time to go in detail there. I just want to spot maybe, because it addresses the number of topics, but they're addressing specifically the topic of IoT data, and defines that the data generated by smart product should not reside in silo at the product manufacturer side, and that it should be accessible to the users of those data products, which can be companies or individuals, but also that the access should be granted to third parties who could use that data to, for example, create innovative services. In that case, we see that also data ecosystems and data exchange ecosystems and data exchange platforms will play a very important role as this regulation will go in effect, and that data will circulate even more between various stakeholders. But more information I cannot give you right now for the sake of time.
Okay, thank you, Didier. Andrew, yeah.
Just to say, this is just dropping in, Baz. We have a number of questions in the attendees. If you want to if I bring them out to the panel, and then just conscious of time, that's fine.
Okay, maybe we can, I'll ask one last question to Andrew on this subject, because it's really linked to it, and after we dive into Q&As. Sorry for taking a little bit more time. Andrew, what's your point of view on this?
Okay, with speed, government should be proactive and extensive in its activities around data exchange. It shouldn't seek to centralize, because there are multi-platforms and data exchanges out there. Summarizing under three headers: data sets, skill sets, mindsets. This is what government should do. On data sets, this for me is more about data orchestration and innovation. This means establishing high quality registers around things like geospatial data to drive economic value. Having maybe as an intermediary step before a data exchange, decentralized data catalogs to include more private sector data to at least signpost where it sits. Pushing data quality across government through compliance, and then experimenting with data innovation, synthetic data, for example, to bring more data into the marketplace. On skill sets, moving beyond data science to data engineers, governance experts, people who can really wrangle with some of the business models that I think we need to bring on stream. That's a very particular set of skills, and digital skills as well. And on mindset, really, this is just about using the convening power of cities to drive public-private partnerships, to work in the open on things like data exchange ecosystems, particularly IoT, to build those around the next big gnarly problems that city must address: mobility and energy and climate resilience, which I mentioned, and work with people around consent for data sharing, and how that can be enabled through digital ID to connect data sets up to drive more value. But I'd finish with just a couple of words: purpose-driven data sharing, which again I sort of alluded to with my critique on where we should take open data. There we go.
Thank you, Andrew. So that's a great point of view of the role that government should play in data exchange. Sorry, Baz, for taking.
We've just got a couple of minutes left. I'll just pick one particular question, I think, which the panel will be pretty fascinated with. How do you see data exchanges between the different geographies, between Europe, North America, and China and Asia? How do you see these data exchanges evolving in those regions and the approaches within those regions?
Maybe Tomo, you can have a word on this.
Yes, this is a great question. So that is why the World Economic Forum, collaborating with the center in the globe, is thinking about interoperable data, the ecosystem, and the network of data exchanges. Otherwise, each country is thinking about each country's own data regulation, data as a governance framework with the economic business model. So we are now thinking about how to interconnect each country's the trial with the common purposes that would make that would allow each country's trial to be more interoperable. This is my observation at this moment.
Maybe Andrew, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the basic issue about data interoperability, but I mean, I think my frank assessment is that we live in a particular moment where where countries are retreating behind their borders, so it's a big challenge. And whilst there are various sort of data adequacy arrangements that are being organised, for example, between the UK and the UAE at the moment in a post-Brexit world, that's the sort of axis that I move along. Those are the things that will provide the context so that we can sort of make sure that data is exchanged properly, and we're doing that thing that we always have to do, which is balancing innovation potential with privacy protection for firms and individuals.
As we have time for another question.
Yeah, I can just ask one question. Do you see third parties which are trusted currently being disintermediated because of data sharing consortiums which are coming out? So there are trusted parties today, but because you got this consortium going on of data exchange, they're actually being disintermediated in what's going on. Any examples of that? That's the question which came in.
Didier, do you want to respond to that?
You're talking about disintermediate or
Yes.
talk about intermediation?
Disintermediate.
Okay. Basically, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Okay, so just there's a trusted party which is providing a good service today, but then you've got data exchanges being built and common sharing going on, and they're being disintermediated because their service is now no longer relevant because somebody else is now taking that over.
So if the subject is about, if I understand, about some disintermediated models for data exchange, actually what we observe on the market is that there are some very different needs on the market. And therefore, it's important that all these different models are proposed to the companies that want to exchange data. Sometimes in a more decentralized way, sometimes in a more managed or central way. And so that is one of the, for example, one of the subjects on which DAWEX is working very closely in providing all these different models of intermediation so that it can actually meet the needs of various organizations on the market. There's not a common way of looking at and implementing data exchanges, actually.
Okay, and the last question, Stephen, which is I think is so powerful, but is climate is the biggest issue we all face on Earth right now, given the hot summer we're all facing. In what initiative is going on, which is actually about data exchanges around climate?
Maybe Didier or Tomo again.
Yes, so for my end, the Seafrail Hub Ocean in Norway Center is collecting ocean data as a kind of as a part of the climate exchange fighting from multiple sources and create estimate of CO2 emission by shipping using their own algorithm. This is called the Ship Emission Tracker, and these estimates are publicly available and expected to be used in the ESG context. So actually, there is the data exchanges for focusing on the climate and the issues, especially focusing on the ocean integrity. This is actually the example.
And I could add maybe the space data marketplace I was mentioning earlier. There are, and I mentioned that there are a number of startups and big companies that are involved, and actually they are all working on building use case. A number of those use cases they're working on that leverages the data exchange environment have the objective to address these climate-related questions. So yes, there are a number of things going on this field right now.
Thank you very much.
London was hotter than Dubai yesterday. My own take on this is that it's absolutely critical that this issue is addressed, and I think data exchange would be a massive step towards that.
Concur. Thank you very much, Stephen and the panel here. I appreciate conscious of time, but fascinating discussion around data exchanges and the potential of what's in place today and some of the challenges and risks as you go forward.
Thank you all. Thank you to our panelists again for their participation. And I wish you all a great afternoon and a great MIT CDOIQ Symposium.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.